we should try to coordinate the night together and then give Christine express.
Yeah.
For that.
Hi, Melissa.
Hey.
How are you doing? You got somebody down in the gym that you're coordinating with?
Yeah, he gets, I was glad to hear it was here, because I'm like, oh, good, I have a middle school practice that ends at 7:45 here, so.
Oh, what do
I'll
you got?
save my husband a trip in the.
Well, next month it's gonna be at the elementary stuff.
Okay. That's all right.
Last night. I have Legends, they got a
Is Jensen playing next month?
Thursday, Saturday.
We're doing some sort of-
He didn't want to, so Dawson was doing that. I got like Friday. Austin just taking it as season.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, we enjoyed it, but it was like, okay, we're not gonna live in that 20 minutes. Traffic.
All right, 6 o'clock. I'm gonna go ahead and call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Josh,
Here.
Tyler,
Here.
that's Adna, Melissa, here, and Andrew.
Here. Do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public forum, we have no one here for public forum. Is that correct, Gail? All right, moving along, oral reports, announcements and celebrations. Dr. Trujillo?
Okay, we're gonna start off with celebrations and I'm going to turn it over to high school principal Cindy Bassett to introduce two special guests that will be joining us as we move forward as student representatives to join the board. And so Cindy, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thank you. We're really excited that you asked to have our students represent, so we have Claire Lewis. Claire is a senior this year, so she'll be able to finish out this semester and represent our students that way. And then we have Carter Winter. Carter is a junior. And so he'll be able to finish out this semester and also start next school year for us. They're both fantastic representatives for the entire student body, and I know they'll do an excellent job. So thank you very much for inviting them.
Awesome. Awesome. Welcome, congratulations as well. Guys, don't be afraid to speak up. All right.
We're thrilled to have you, so thank you for joining us. So, okay, and then that leads to just one other announcement that I wanted to make around celebrations is just today we had Teacher Work Day and we had George Couros, national speaker that came and did an amazing job with our staff. In addition to that, I wanted to, we had an incredible, which we do we have it? Right, okay. We have a video we're going to show you in just a second that we shared with everyone today. And before that, or sometime in there, we had Tiger Voices. So our kids sang and got everybody fired up, and just, it was really wonderful. They were doing some great scat. And so we'll have Jason show us the amazing video that Troy Banning put together with Carrie Clark to honor our teachers this morning.
So I'm gonna mute this mic. I'm gonna roll over to my other mic here.
Okay.
1 second, please.
I think that one thing that makes Gilbert special and stand out from other schools is the standard that we're held to here. I think that from our teachers to our superintendent to the students to the athletes to everybody, we're held to this high standard, showing high character and just being good people overall. It's more than just being a student, it's more than just being an athlete, it's more than just teaching students. It's about being a community and everybody being there for each other. And I think we do a great job of that. And I think that's what makes us special and really stand out from just any other school in Iowa or the United States.
I'm Rita Van Gogh, and I'm a second grader at Gilbert Elementary. Hi, my name is Patrick Packer, and I'm a second grader at Gilbert Elementary. Hi, I'm Keely Jordan, and I'm a fifth grade leader. Hi, I'm Fabrizio Hernandez, and I'm a fifth grade leader. I'm Taryn Eckert, and I'm a sixth grader here at Gilbert Middle School.
I'm Jordan Martinez, and I'm the eighth grader here at the school. And my name is Owen Calvin. I'm a senior at Gilbert High School.
And my name's Sarah Thatcher. So some of my favorite things in Gilbert are mostly the teachers. They're just so kind. When you want to ask them a question, you can just ask them. Some of my favorite things about Gilbert schools are the teachers that are super nice and they always are there to help. I think Gilbert is such a special school because all the teachers are very nice and respectful to their students. What I like about school is that all of the teachers here are super nice and all of the people here are super nice.
The teachers here at Gilbert are great, but I would have to say one of my favorite is Mr. Charleston. He teaches a couple science classes. I currently have him for me, and he just makes sure that everyone feels like they're welcome in the class. He makes sure that everyone knows what's going on, and he also has a lot of fun.
My favorite teachers are Mrs. Claver, Mrs. Mankey, and Mrs. Wiley, because they're all really nice and they care about everybody in school.
One of my favorite teachers has been Mr. Smith. He's been able to help everybody with whatever they need. He knows exactly how each person that he takes care of, I guess, what they need to learn and be successful. He pushes you, but yet doesn't push you too far to back under the pressure. Just awesome teacher.
I have a lot of favorite teachers here at Gilbert. We have plenty of really good ones, but one of my favorites is definitely Mrs. Moore. She's our Spanish 3 and 4 teacher. Spanish is definitely one of my worst subjects, and she makes that class a really good time. She helps me out and then gives me a little extra tutoring, I'd say. This is not a great subject for me, but she really cares about us outside the classroom. So she always asks how we're doing and how the sports games go, like involved in like theater, so that's how that goes. And just really great person in general.
What I always love about the school is the sweet teachers are super sweet and caring. Always love your teachers and always thank them. Gilbert has made me feel very comfortable in what I like to do and let me do more of it. I love that everybody's kind, nice, and sweet.
One thing that I think makes Gilbert really special is just how tight everyone is and how nice everyone is. I know that when I walk into a classroom or I walk onto the floor or whatever it may be, I know that I'm going to have someone that I can turn to, that I can talk to, and the person next to me is going to have someone they can go to. I know that we also feel like we have someone that we can rely on, and I think that makes it.
One piece of advice that I would give for anybody coming into high school would be just to take advantage of all the opportunities that we have here.
The biggest piece of advice I have is to really just not take the time for granted, because for me, it feels like just yesterday I was starting high school, and now it's crazy to think that just next year I'm going to graduate. So just really soak up the time you have with these people and this time, because it's probably the best couple years of your life, and it's going to go by really fast.
Jason, let me know when you're ready.
Yeah.
Okay, well, and I just want to thank the students that did that, put that together. I want to thank the principals because they helped us in putting that together, and it was a wonderful way to start our morning. So I just wanted to share that. We'll be sharing that out on social media tonight or tomorrow. So, and next up, we have a brief hiring update from Mr. Vanderpool, our HR director.
Hello, welcome everybody.
Vic.
Happy New Year. Good to see everyone. Welcome to our student reps. Glad you guys are here. Hiring update. So hiring season is officially started. We're already kind of starting to look into next year. I think everybody knows that it's going to be a tricky hiring season in all areas, not just school. And so we've actually already posted positions for next year. We've hired one already. So we were able to hire a special ed teacher that is just outstanding. We're in the process of hiring a second grade teacher due to an internal transfer due to a retirement. And then we're also working on wrapping up our director of transportation position, which is coming up very soon. So we have 19 applicants for our director of transportation, which I was very, very happy to see. And it's a really, really diverse group of people. So you've got people in logistics and mechanics and busing and all kinds of different related fields. So it's been fun to look at the candidates and things like that. So we're in the process of kind of screening those down to probably 7 to 8, and we'll do like a screening interview process first, kind of eliminate some of the candidates to try to narrow it down to 3 or 4 that we'll bring onto campus, and then hopefully hire the best of that group. And so as of right now, we know that there are going to be some more positions coming as the year goes. I mentioned it being a tricky hiring season. If you would have looked 5 to 10 years ago, there was only probably 3 areas or 4 areas that were really hard to hire: special ed, math and science, family consumer science, and like a shop, buildings and trades type teacher. Those are very difficult to find. As of a couple weeks ago, there are now 25 different positions that are identified as difficult to fill as teachers. So including PE and social studies and some of those that there's been an influx of, over the last 20 years. And so we're really trying to get out ahead of the game, and we'll continue to fill positions. And that's really all I have for the moment. Any questions related to hiring?
With all the candidates and different diverse backgrounds for that logistics, what do you think you're focusing on for a core skill? Or
Yeah, well, it's really interesting, because I think we're very fortunate, and I don't know if Bruce gets enough credit for the work that he does. Like he's a mechanic, and he does logistics, and he does communications, and he does transportation, and he does so many different areas. And to try to find someone that is super strong in all of those areas is difficult, because we've got a pool of people that they move UPS and police cars, and they do all kinds of things. We've got some that are just strictly mechanics, never touched a bus. We've got people that run busing companies, but have never touched a wrench. And so you're getting a little bit of everything in candidates is what we're hoping to try to find someone that has a little bit of all of those or can pick up parts of those. So for example, Bruce had no busing experience when he came. He was strictly a mechanic, and he picked up the busing and some other things. Depending on the candidate we get, it could depend on if they work with Bruce for a period of time, because we do have a bus inspection coming up right toward the end of the school year when Bruce would be leaving. And so to get this person identified early enough to where they could work with Bruce, get to know the drivers and things like that. Dr. T and I did go out and meet with the drivers, because we thought it would be very good to get the drivers' input on what they think about, who would replace them. And we got really, really good feedback and a lot of complimentary things from Bruce, which was outstanding to hear. But to answer your question, Tyler, a little bit of everything, somebody that's a good communicator, somebody that's good with technology, because the logistics and software programs are challenging. And, you need to maximize those in order to maximize routes during a time when drivers are short. And so, we need somebody with some basic mechanic skills or has the ability to farm out some of those things as we've done in the past. And so, and then obviously we need someone that's going to connect well with kids and a variety of those things. So we'll be evaluating candidates based on all of those different areas.
What's the time frame, Vic, on this? You said.
Well, we're hoping to start the screening interviews next Monday, and then maybe have a candidate to bring to you in February.
Wow.
So depending on how things go with the first round of screening, it could be earliest February, latest probably March.
Okay. Mostly in our region.
Yes. Yeah, we were able to connect with the state director of transportation that was able to put it onto their association's website, which gave us a wider pool of people. We put it on LinkedIn, we put it on Indeed, we put it on Teach Iowa. So it's in a variety of places. And so it's a lot of candidates from Central Iowa. There are a couple of candidates from out of state that are willing to relocate. But mostly Central Iowa or Iowa for sure. So.
Regarding the challenge to fill positions, I saw where one of the contract changes under the personnel report has a signing bonus. Do you anticipate that coming into play more often or?
Yeah, I think it's going to. I think we're going to have to look very closely at some of those really challenging areas. Now, the nice part is we've been doing this long enough to know kind of where our areas are a little more tricky. So for example, right now we have our second grade position open and we have like 22 applicants. We used to get 122 applicants. And so that's no joke. It was well over 100 applicants. And so it is tricky. I think there are some areas that we're really going to have to look at, like a math and science and special ed. I mean, you might get, well, we advertised for what, about 2 months, Cindy? Had one applicant for special ed. Now we got a really, really quality applicant. We got very lucky. And we also posted it in December for the upcoming year, where we're actually a little before hiring season has started. But we wanted to get ahead of the game. And so I think we're going to have to consider a variety of things as we move forward. Just because everybody's offering those things and it's a really competitive market. There are districts that are offering $5,000 retention bonuses. If you just don't leave, we'll pay you $5,000. You know, like in special ed, for example. If you're coming back and you will stay and sign a contract for next year, $5,000. You know, and so that's how competitive it's getting. I mean, there's, you know, Des Moines, I think they're offering up to 20,000 in some areas, you know, over the course of multiple years. And so I think we're going to have to look at a variety of different options just to be competitive and continue to get quality that we want. Any other questions for me?
Thank you, Vic.
Thank you.
Okay, moving into the next piece I have is intermediate parent meeting. I just want to let you know that as you are aware that at the intermediate school, Amy has worked really hard with her staff, Amy Griffin with her staff on Leader in Me and with their students and the projects that they've done, but it's not just a project, it's really kind of their school culture and way of life, if you will. And so tonight they have extended that out to parents to say, if you'd like to come as a parent to learn more about Leader in Me, how can you infuse it into what you're doing at home to just continue that common language. I know that Amy is presenting, Carrie Clark is there, as well as their coach, Melissa Jones is there presenting. I think we had 20 plus parents that would be attending. So it's a start and a beginning. And we're very excited about that. So I just wanted you to know that that's happening. The next piece I had on winter sports is just letting you know that, of course, our winter sports are up and going and we have more kids than ever before that are involved in our activities. And it's really exciting to see. I will tell you, getting to all of them sometimes a little bit of challenge, but we're, you know, one minute we're at bowling and next we're over at the basketball game. So our bowling team is, boy, they're just an amazing group of both young men and women and do such a great job. And the crowds there cheering them on. And you know, one family even had the high chairs that they brought in their own lawn chairs into the bowling alley because I was like, ooh, they're smart. They know what to do here. So Ian, actually, our athletic director, is not here this evening because he's over at it's wrestling tonight, right? Oh, yeah, we're at wrestling. Go ahead.
Wrestling and basketball tonight.
That's right. That's right. So he's busy with that, but he's very proud of the fact that our kids are continuing to be involved in our programs. And so we're having a really wonderful winter season. So I wanted to share that. And then the last piece that I had, there's you know, as always, there's a lot of celebrations that I could cover, but I just wanted to, and the family has approved of me saying this out loud. I just wanted to mention our middle school, Zach Langford. If you're familiar, if you are not familiar, he's had some health issues and received a heart transplant over the holiday season and is doing extremely well. And so we're all thinking of him. And if you look on Facebook, there is a website. It's COTA, which is COTA, I think, for heart. And you look up Zach Langford, it comes up. There's where you can leave a message. And if you're interested in donating to the family, because it is a costly endeavor with all medical expenses, but we wish that continual health and improvement and progress, and things are going very well. So we're thinking of their family. The younger brother, Xander, is also one of our students, and we're thinking of him as well, because sometimes that's hard. So a lot going on there, but I'm very grateful to our school and our community for reaching out to this family. So, and go Zach is what I would say there. So that is my update. All right.
Thank you very much. And moving on, any comments, questions for Dr. Trujillo? Admin reports. Department update reports. I think we have that all in our folders. Any comments or questions on that from our notes? District vulnerability report. Vic, you went through that already?
Yes, we're just gonna briefly touch on it.
Okay.
So as you're aware, district or the state offers some funding, $50,000 per school if you went through this vulnerability assessment. That was completed early in December. They went around to each school. Story County Sheriff's Office completed our assessment. They met with the building principals. We had all of the grounds and maintenance and technology and all the directors that needed to be there. We walked the building, we had conversations. There were the documents they had to go through to ask all kinds of questions, everything from doors to fobs to keys to technology to cameras to fencing to everything you could possibly think of. And then they put together kind of what they thought were the priorities for each building. Obviously, I'm not going to go through those at this time because there's some security concerns for sharing that information, but I will share that when the report is finalized and came to the state. We did that in all 4 buildings. The report goes to the state will approve our reports at some point here. And then we will be in the process of prioritizing what those concerns were. And then the process is that we spend our own funds and then we get reimbursed following the upgrades of the facilities based on the 4 areas that were concerns. It's nothing, there was really nothing there that was overwhelmingly shocking to us. Just things that we need to improve on, get better at. And then each building gets 50,000, but you can carry the money over. So if we use, like say, example, 30,000 at the high school or 40,000 at the high school, we can take the remaining 10,000 and apply toward another building. And so we're looking to find the results of that and if it's approved. And then we'll get started on prioritizing improvements for each building. Hoping to have that all wrapped up before the end of the year from now, by December next year. There could be some things though that are also identified that could be included in future bonds. And so we may pick 1 or 2 things and then maybe roll some things into future bonds. We need to similar to what we did with security and safety.
I'm assuming that's something that's been shared with CMBA or how is that?
When we get to that point, we will we'll have to discuss it a little further when it comes back from the state about as we look at it as a board to say, what are those pieces and what could that look like? So, yes. And I want to thank Vic and the principals and Jason and everybody else that was involved because it was an extensive amount of time to work with every building to go through the process. I'm very grateful that we decided to go with our Story County Sheriff Department. I was in a superintendent meeting recently where the state offered up another company that we could have utilized and we were finding just some difficulties communicating with them and we decided not to go that direction. We thought it would be better to have it done locally and those superintendents are still waiting on their report that they had, from the company and we got ours right away. So I'm very grateful to also to Story County Sheriff for helping us through that process as well. So
our thought process was that by having people that walk in our buildings every day, looking at our buildings every day, we're going to get a more true picture of what our needs are versus having some company from another state and then walk around and set priorities maybe that weren't as big of a priority for us as it is for them. So Story County Sheriff was awesome to work with us and did a nice job. Thanks.
Thanks, Vic. Continue with admin reports. We've got Board of Education student representatives, which Cindy already went through today. Again, welcome.
is now when they give their speeches.
Yes, you got your speeches, and presentations ready?
So ready.
We was water sewer meeting, so Dr. Trio and I have been trying to work with John Pop to set a meeting up. Right now, we just don't have a date, be blunt. We had several dates out there, just we couldn't get all the people at the table together, so we are still in that process and it will get done this week. I mean, we'll have a meeting set, the meeting won't be this week. But the meeting should be set the next couple of weeks, is kind of our plan. So, and then from that meeting, I maybe get a plan to what the next steps are.
Did we get data from them?
We have nothing from them yet.
Okay.
Yes, what we're trying to do, part of the first part of that meeting that I anticipate is that, you know, we're feeling like some of the data that we need really needs to come from them. And we need to be pretty clear on what that is. So what I would, you know, suggest to all of you is that if you have very specific data related to the things we've talked about, make sure you share that with Gail and we'll add that to, you know, what we need from them, because they're, you know, we can go through our bills and look at things, but that's not as helpful as they have it right in front of them, like what it means and what segment of it and what part of it is the irrigation or the you know, watering of the fields and what part of it isn't. And so they have that information. I think they could pull that pretty easily, but that's the first conversation we need to have, in addition to having the, okay, now what, you know, here's what we're looking at. And whether it's talking about rates, whether it's talking about how can we work together, whether it's talking, you know, all those pieces. So we hope that comes together soon.
Jeff is not here, but the one thing he did tell me was, hey, our bill was 6,000 this month.
Yeah.
Exclamation
that.
point. So, and I saw that, I said,
Talking about that.
yes,
Okay. So on that, last month was 38,000.
yeah.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
month, there
That
was
one's-
$28,000 credit.
Oh,
Now,
so we still have $30,000 bill?
we still have a $3,000 bill.
$6,000 bill, sorry.
Actually it was, well, earlier, okay, but this month was 3. So that's what the data that they, it is so hard to follow. So what we do is we pay the amount due on, you get the, because if we don't pay that, then that really messes up. And we can't apply the credit to other accounts. So we pay what they say, pay this amount, and that's what we pay everyone. So it's what's happening with the meters, whether what's going on. It's not that we only pay what they want, you know, what amount is due now. So I just want to bring that up. There was $28,000 credit. So last month was 38,000 what we paid. So
I think it'll be good to get that data.
I
and
agree.
Sit down with them. Really
Absolutely.
good.
We're just struggling with
Working on
common dates.
Yeah, just,
Common dates.
a lot of people out. All right, RSP enrollment forecasts report.
Okay, so I'll kick this off first. So RSP has been amazing to work with. They so they have met our timeline of January. So I'm very, very thankful to them for that. And as we were going through this last week to just kind of do a dry run, to look at it, to talk about it, we saw some discrepancies in our numbers and their numbers that we were a little confused about. So we had great dialogue about why is that, what does that look like? And so we went back to the drawing board related to the numbers of enrollment and what that looks like. And they asked us for some more specific reports, which we have sent them today. And so what we discuss is we're not quite ready to share the enrollment projections with you tonight. So what we're going to do is give you a preview of they have done so much work on what does our community look like, what's their process, and how do they put it all together. So this is kind of what I would call part one. And then as they bring together those numbers, we're hoping that by our board retreat, which would be the end of January, we'll have those specific numbers. I also have worked with, and I'll talk about that in a minute, CMBA has been on this call also. So we're been working together with RSP. So, so tonight is what we're calling a sneak peek of what kind of data they're looking at to make the decisions that we'll be sharing with you in I think it's a couple weeks for our retreat. So I'm going to turn it over to RSP. I think they're on the line and we'll go from there.
I am. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, perfect. So I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. All right. See if that gets to full screen. There we go. Okay, so like Dr. Trujillo said, I'm just going to go through more of a preview of the entire analysis. So my name is Jenna Wallace. I work with RSP, a planner here. We are a consulting firm that only works with school districts throughout the Midwest. So working with superintendents kind of all over to kind of help you guys, Board of Education and other district facilitators make decisions with the best information we can. So enrollment analysis leading into boundaries or future facilities, all that sorts of thing is our expertise here. We're around the Iowa area a lot. So we're working in Ames and Bondurant and Newton all in the past 2 months. So I'm very familiar with your guys' area, but very excited to start this first enrollment analysis with you guys. So I will go through, like she said earlier, so this is just going to be a preview. So there's going to be a lot more information of student data coming later. What I'm going to try to hit on today is the stuff that I can share. So what are our live births in the community? What's our demographics in the community? What is our housing, current housing? And then what is our outlook for potential housing in the district? So kind of these drivers that get into projections, and then where we're going and how you'll receive those student projections at a later time. So first slide here, we have a team of GIS mapping analysts on our team here. So you'll have many different visuals throughout this report. So this visual here is just going to be the district boundary in purple, city of Gilbert in yellow, and then city of Ames coming up from the south in this kind of orangey brown color, and then the different school locations highlighted here with the different icons. So this is going to be the format of the maps you see throughout the presentation. The next slide here gets into the methodology of RSP. So one of our first steps, and especially coming into a new district, is creating what we call planning areas. So if you follow a green line, I'll follow like this one right here, instead of putting your student data in and providing projections over the entire district boundary, we uniquely draw the district into smaller building block pieces we call planning areas. This gives us the granularity to say, in this subdivision with this priced homes built in this year, you're yielding this many students, versus in new developing areas coming up, you're yielding more students. Those sorts of kind of conversations of how we get to the proximity of students and just the granularity of how different houses have different amounts of students throughout the years lead into those projections. So I believe we are at about 120 planning areas for your school district. And this just kind of shows what we can do with that data. So if we're zooming into one planning area, this gives us the opportunity as on this planning area, this is how many units were built in what year. You put the student data into this, we really captured the full picture of single family versus multifamily versus built in the 80s versus built last year. All that kind of things comes into using this methodology of planning areas. And then lastly, when we put it into the model, so this may mean a lot to some people or some other, it just looks like gibberish, but it is statistics. So on that planning area level, we're plugging in all these different variables into those projections. So when you do receive those projections forecasts, just kind of wanted to speak a little bit tonight about that methodology there. So next slide, we want to kind of start a little bit and pull out some of those signature and kind of indicators that lead into elementary projections. So this table in front of you is our live birth data from Story County. And what we're showing here is how many of the live births throughout the years, and how did that correlate with the number of kindergartners 5 years later? So out of a sample of Story County live births, how many actually enrolled in the district, and what's this trend throughout time? So we can see that we have been declining slightly on live births. Something very common that we're seeing in most counties and most school districts that we're working with is our amount of live births decreasing year to year. However, we can see that your kindergarten class has grown. So
despite less live births in the county, you're increasing your percentage of live births. So that's going to be an indicator that we're looking at for what that kindergarten and pre-K classes come in for those next 5 years. And this will also be an indicator that we want you guys to look at between the years of coming in if this spikes back up or if this continues to decrease. In order to maintain and increase kindergarten classes, you will need to continue to enroll 12% or more of Story County live births. So next slide here is we're looking from the district boundary, where can we see areas on that planning area level that have increased in student count and decreased in student count. So areas that in the last 5 years that increased in the amount of students are going to be in orange. So you can see this large square here down kind of in the city of Ames, where they increased their student count by the most. And then green is going to be where they decrease. So this doesn't mean that there aren't students here. It just means over the past 5 years, the number decreased, while in areas in orange, the number increased. So this is total K-12 students. We correlate that with where areas have been kind of emerging with student data versus our heat map here of where are actually students located. So utilizing that student data and putting them into the system, we can see where they're located throughout the district and how close they are to each other to generate a heat map. So we can see very clearly that right in central city of Gilbert is our hottest pod of student density, as well as right north of Ames as our other area of the hottest student density. While these new areas, kind of new bubbles, you can see are those areas that increased the past 5 years and how that relationship is going to work. So next slide here is we're going to pull the demographics from the community. So using some of our mapping skills, as well as using US Census data and American Community Survey, we can pull these kind of trends for your district boundary. So this is bigger than the city of Gilbert, takes in some of that growth of city of Ames, and it's your entire district boundary. We can see population growth from over the past 20 years, where are we going with the housing inventory and that growth, and then income and workforce. So kind of meshing all together these different demographics of when population is increasing and when housing is increasing, we're most likely going to see the student increases in the future as well. So at that point, we pivot and try to focus more in on the housing and development trends, as well as what is the opportunities for growth in that field. So the visual in front of you is a map that goes through the average year built of units. So red being the newest units in the district. So we can see these pockets are going to be, their averages are built after 2015. While blue, we can see mostly rural is going to be the older inventory and how that shakes out. So our areas of the hottest student density down in the city of Ames, built from 2000 to 2015. We can see that in the city of Gilbert, built around 1990 to 2000. We correlate that with the median home value. So trying to very isolate what is the age and almost the quality of the available inventory in the district and what's the price point. So together we can kind of piece together where these planning areas are at in their subdivision life cycle and where we see student increases in the future. So in this case, we can see the dark orange is going to be the most expensive, while blue is the least expensive. And you see the green kind of right in the middle of that affordability index. Affordability is a big indicator of how many students are yielded from different developments and housing inventory. So that is kind of a reason why we pull this up, a median home value. And then lastly, when we're trying to piece together the residential inventory, we use this visual. This is a dot map. So you can kind of focus in on the different dots throughout the district of where were the new units built in the last 5 years. So we're trying to really focus in on what's the very newest units in the district and where do we see most likely kind of feeding into where would we see student increases from these units. So we have a new subdivision coming in south of Gilbert. And then we have one by the Heritage Park, and then right along the corner of the city of Ames, as well as going over into Boone County, as some of these areas that in the last 5 years have produced new units. You kind of see how that shakes out. Where in 2022, we had 79 new units in the district, which is the record for the past 5 years. So that's also signaling to future residential growth in the district with population and then student growth after that. When we're looking at our development of units throughout time, we put together this visual that kind of shows, I'm more of a visual person than a data person. So I think it kind of paints a better story of where we can see the majority of units and how that fits into the bigger picture of over time. So by decades here, if you look at the blue line, blue bar, that's going to be the number of existing units in each decade. And then green on top of it's going to be the new units in a decade. So we can see that 2000 to 2009, we built the largest share of units by decade. So 848 in 2010, 2019, 682. So if we add up those 2 decades there, we're over half, we're very close to half of our total units in the district, leading to those different average ages of the inventory and how we're flipping a little bit over these past times into a new inventory district in future student growth. So at this point, we pivoted. So that was kind of establishing all of the current residential inventory and where the current students are located in those. And then we pivot into what is our potential growth. So future subdivisions coming online, what is our expert opinion on the timing of those and how we craft together these different visuals. The growth area map is taken from meeting with local city planners. So we met with City of Gilbert and City of Ames, as well as just kind of read through different developer newspapers, kind of pushing together where we know current development is happening and where we expect it to happen for this next decade. So green areas are those areas of active development. So putting units in, putting infrastructure in, these sorts of phases. Yellow, we have identified on a 5-year timeline. So they may be awaiting, they may be phase 3 while phase 1 is still being built, or they're awaiting infrastructure connectivity or things like that. And then purple, we have on a 10-year forecast. So areas definitely to watch. We know that a lot of different economic things and out of our control items play a role into development timing. So keeping a look on those interest rates and supply chain challenges may turn where, you know, yellow areas stall out and purple areas speed up, those kind of things that we want to really look at in between reports. So this is our overview of the district boundaries growth areas. And then we zoom in these next 2 visuals to kind of give some names and so you can look at the different areas. So this is going to be City of Ames here when we zoom in down to the south in your district. And then next visual, zooming into the City of Gilbert of our current and then 10-year forecasted areas of development there. Overall, when we put all this together and we're looking at unit potential, we have about 4,300 total potential units to be built in the district the next 10 years, with around 350 of those in current stages, 900 in 5-year stages, and then 3,000 on that 10-year stage. So we're looking farther out and you have a lot of potential for growth, but 3,000 of those are kind of awaiting for those infrastructure, developer interest, those sorts of things, those indicators that we're going to watch for these 10-year development timelines. So with that, that concludes my little preview. I promise next time it'll be a lot more robust with the student data. But I do think this paints a pretty good picture as far as all the information we're looking at in the district. And it really paints into in-between reports and how you're looking once you get these forecasts. What are the most important indicators to watch? And that's definitely going to be those live births per county, the speed of the current and 5-year developments, and then demographic shifts. So new populations moving to the district, those sorts of things are going to play a role into projection analyst and then future reports if we work with you guys again. I can take any questions or if I went too fast on any slides, just let me know and I can explain anything a little bit better.
Yeah, can we get these slides sent out to everybody just so they can see them? I mean, at some after the meeting. So Again, we'll get more details once we have our actual data in there, but it's just good to kind of see how they're being built today, so we can kind of move a little bit quicker at the next phase.
Just one question, how are the open enrollment in and out? What assumptions or what do you build into your models for open enrollment?
For sure. So we're able to calculate how many are out of the district boundary, open and rolling out. So we see that trend and then kind of factored into, with the change of the law with the state of Iowa, that's playing a little bit different role. That was one of the questions that I had with Dr. Trujillo of, since our certified enrollment, have we seen open enrollment go up and down? So we're definitely using it kind of on a trend and cohort basis of how many you see between the grades and the likelihood, right, of those projections, the likelihood of future kindergarten and early elementary students also open and rolling out.
The other conversation we had around enrollment related to open enrollment sort of was, what do we do in creating the counts on dual enrollment students? Should we count them? Should we not count them? So we're in that conversation as well to say, what does that, should we include them? Should we not include them? And what we were discussing is that when they are enrolled with us, they need a place to have a seat in the room. So we probably will include that, but that's a conversation. That's one of the things I love about what they're doing is it's very granular and they're looking deep down into those kinds of questions, and it's been really wonderful.
What does it look like to change district lines? That will not for sure not be happening in the next 10 years. Or what is that?
District boundary.
Yeah.
So that's very legal. It's outside of our realm. I think the only school districts we had really done it with is more of an agreement between school districts. So say you extend to this new developing area here, and in return you get this, but it's a very legal process. And that was also in the state of Nebraska, so that may be different. I'm not sure what the actual legal precedent is for the state of Iowa.
My understanding, Melissa, is that for us to change any boundaries, just as she's mentioned, there'd have to be an agreement on both sides. So whatever school district you were doing that with, those have been set in place since, as I understand it, like mid to early 60s.
And when we are moving forward as planning, we're assuming that those will just stay the same.
Yeah. We had conversations with Ames approached us probably 8 years ago, just as we were getting the high school finished. We said we had no interest at that time of making any changes.
Then you have a public vote too.
What's that?
Can that be handled at the board level, or is that a public vote?
Good question. I'm not sure, but it has to be both sides of the agreement. So and it might involve not just the board, but the city.
Yeah, I would think it would involve all the city, our community, because it has such impact on, and it's a passionate topic. If you watch, other school districts that are just moving kids from one building to another within, it's a passionate topic. So I would think there was probably not only policy, but there's probably precedent about legalities that you'd have to follow to make sure that we're following all those things if that was something.
I think Lucky's going through this.
There's, more, there's farmland, which has a different taxable base than maybe another piece of land. So there's lots of factors that go into the type of land that you're talking about.
Milwaukee's kind of going through this right now, just with, they're looking at possibly doing two districts and all that, and I think it was just a board vote. I don't think it ever went public. Don't hold me to that, but I don't think it ever went to a public vote. So I'm not getting that. That's a different situation, but.
But they just kind of like, could this change on us after we?
Right, I'm not advocating for it. I guess I was just.
Yeah,
I need to ask the question.
I think we don't want it to change. We're safe as long as we want it.
Yeah.
And I think that's.
And I think once we get to closer to the numbers, I think, I had a little bit of a sneak peek, and I think what we're gonna find, and won't surprise us is kind of what we thought about when we did this a few months ago with another group. Is we'll see some significant growth, which is what we thought. But I don't think it's good news, but it's not overwhelming news. I think it'll fit beautifully with what we're trying to do with CDMA. But we're just gonna wait a little bit longer so that the numbers are right. I just didn't want those to come out tonight and then have us shift it again in 2 weeks. I said, let's get it right the first time. And for clarification purposes, that was not RSP, that was on our end. We had a really just kind of we thought we did this and so it was on our end that we wanted to make sure the right reports were in their hands so that they could get the right numbers for us.
Any other questions?
I'm assuming multifamily buildings, which we've had for the first time in a number of years, those come into Gilbert. Those are factored in differently than single family dwellings.
Yes, absolutely. So one of the pieces you'll get in that full report is what we call a yield rate. So depending on the development type, so duplex, single family, large apartment complex, those all from your data yield a different amount of students. And so then when you're coming online and having new multifamily units, we have a different impact statement of that potential students factored into the projections.
Pretty thorough.
That's what I thought. Carter, you got all that?
What do you think about that formula?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure some kid at the high school knows it.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you. We're excited to see the report. We're excited to see the numbers. Appreciate the time tonight. And again, we'll talk to you in a couple weeks.
Absolutely. You guys have a great night.
Hey, thank you. You
Thank
too. All right, moving along, 23-24 district calendar.
Okay, well, to start off district calendar, just a couple things I want to share. The first,
I'll bring it up.
okay, great. The first piece I wanted to share is that this portion, as we're talking about as a board, is feedback. It is, there has been no decision made about the calendar. Vic is here, he has led this process. And he's going to talk a little bit about all the steps we've gone through, but I think it's important that everyone understand that we are at the feedback phase. I'm bringing it to you. There's been a lot of work done on a committee, and Vic's going to talk about those pieces. But we want to make sure that we get your feedback. We'll look at that after tonight, and then our hope is that we would be able to come back to our February meeting. And see if we're ready to get the calendar approved. Approval of the calendar, sometimes it's challenging because it's so early. We're already talking about next year. It's like, it's still January. But the calendar, decisions around the calendar impacts everything that we do for next year, including as we start rolling out contracts. People want to know. I had a parent call me last week wanting to know what spring break would be for 23-24 because they're planning something. And we said, oh, it hasn't been approved yet by the board. So we don't know just quite yet. And as soon as we get to that point, we'll be sure to share it out. So with that, it's like the Mr. Vanderpool show tonight. Yeah. Busy guy, we're keeping him busy. So Mr. Vanderpool is going to share the process about the calendar and we'll go from there.
All right, so we started out with a survey to staff last year. We had about 200 respondents. There were several areas that were identified that were very high percentage, high valued items. So the start of it was that they were looking for 3 to 5 days at the beginning of the year. That's those green days in August. So it's time to work in their room, time to get some things done. It was a very high percentage that would like 3 to 5 days. We couldn't make 5 days work because we have to have some at the end, obviously. And so we settled with 3. One of the areas that they looked at is that they wanted to keep Christmas break at 2 weeks. There's a very high percentage of people that liked that. There was a chunk of people, very large chunk of people that would like to keep our spring break aligned with the Board of Regents. So because we have such good ties with Iowa State and so many community ties that it would just make sense that our break would match the Board of Regents breaks. They wanted to start, I'm sorry, Gail, I missed this one at the beginning, if you could slide up. They wanted to start as close to August 23rd as possible. So we're starting on, you can see on the 24th there. The state has a requirement that you can't start before August 23rd. So, with the 3 days, And then some teacher work days at the beginning, we decided that the 24th would be the day that we would start, so we tried to keep as close to the 23rd as possible. Remember, every day we go further, it adds days to the end, so we want to try to go as close to that 23rd as possible. And then as you look toward the bottom of the calendar, there were a few other things down toward the bottom. You know, obviously, they would like to get done as soon as possible, as the earliest date as possible. That was one of the things that was concerning. And then I think that was all the areas, the main areas. So those were very high percentage things. So we started with those assumptions, but those assumptions really hadn't changed much, with only adding 16 staff members that really would have no concept of what the calendar looked like in the past. Okay, so then we put together several drafts of a calendar that could potentially occur. We formed a committee that was about 15 to 20 staff members with a wide variety of content areas. It had some administrators, it had teachers represented from every building. And then we sat down and started looking at calendars and working on calendars. Now, we're required to have 1080 hours, 1080 hours, okay? This current calendar reflects, I think, like 1100, it's at the very bottom.
1123.
1123, so we always want to go above the 1080 in case we have some snow days. We have a little padded room in there. That consistent days is very consistent with within a few hours of what we've done in the past. Minus the COVID year, we had some goofy things in the COVID year. So we've tried to keep the calendar consistent with hours. So we could have that little, if we had a goofy winter where we had 14 snow days or something, we have some padding in the end where we could forgive a few days and not have to make up all full 14 hours or 14 days. Sat down with the committee, looked at some drafts, come up with the several options, got a lot of input from the staff members. And then one of the big things that emerged was that staff would like to have a 2:30 early out on Wednesday. Okay, we currently have been doing this for probably almost 15 years at the high school. This has been going on for quite a long time. Due to the complexity of the high school schedule, there is not time for content areas to meet because of a variety of things that can take me a long time to explain. So they've had this 2:30 schedule for the better part of 15 years. They, at the other buildings, were looking at an interest in adding that 2:30 also. So there would be a 2:30 with this draft on the orange days. There would be a 2:30 release on the orange days on Wednesdays. Now, Wednesdays were selected 2:30 at the high school, middle school, and intermediate, and 2:45 at the elementary, because we have to stagger that a little bit. So you're talking about 25 minutes difference than what we're currently doing. Now, this does not affect hours because we're already counting 6.5 hours on Wednesdays already, because the high schoolers, you have to count the building with the least amount of hours on that day. So it does not affect our hours at all. We're actually going to be, our calendar will be a little longer than it was last year. After looking at all that, we put all that together, we kind of had some conversations about what were next steps. So we decided that we would take it to the PTO because we thought they were a very active group that would give us some really good input. I went to the PTO meeting along with Carrie Clark. Cindy was in attendance that night as well. And we looked at this calendar and went through the calendar with the PTO group. There was probably 15 parents there that night that sat down, asked a lot of questions. At that time, there really wasn't any concern that they brought up other than consistency of days. So if we're going to get out on a certain Wednesday at 12:30 for professional development, can we try to make it as consistent as possible? You know, don't make it the first, then the third, then the fourth, back to the first. And so we took their inputs. There really was not any questions around the 2:30 early release at that time. Went back, had a second meeting with our calendar committee, went through the calendar again, made a few more tweaks to it, realized that we had to make a shift in graduation because there is a state rule that graduation must occur within a certain number of hours of seniors' last day and last day of school. So in the past, for those of you that have been in the community, graduation was typically always was it Memorial Day weekend?
Weekend, except for like every third or fourth year.
Yeah, switch it due to the calendar. And so we're on one of those switching years where it has to go back to Memorial Day weekend. And so that was kind of the process that we went through in developing the calendar. We have to have 187 contact days for staff members. So you can see there is a day at the end of the year that staff members will be working when students are already gone. Typically at that point, that's not the most productive time of the year for teachers. Everybody's ready to go, so we don't add 3 or 4 days there. That's why we loaded up at the beginning. But that was kind of the process we used to develop that. Now, the 2:30 early releases would be collaboration time for teachers to work together. Now, Wednesday was picked because all staff is available on Wednesdays. It's the only day where it is a protected day due to what we would call church night, right? We have no activities going on. We have no games going on. We looked at a Friday, but we lose a ton of people due to coaching. We looked at Mondays, we would lose a ton of people due to coaching. And that interferes with their ability to collaborate with their classmates or with their teams, their colleagues. And so Wednesday ended up being kind of the best day since we had already had an established 2:30 at the high school already. So that was a lot. What questions does anyone have?
Let me just add a couple things. One is that this is something I heard on, as I, joined Gilbert through my listening tour, as teachers were looking, they're always, wanting more time to collaborate, more time to work together. So I had heard that loud and clear. And so this was an opportunity to take a look at that. Also the, GEA, our association has brought it up about the equity piece related to why do they get to have it at the high school, but we don't have it at this building or that building. So they had brought that up. With that being said, what I want to be very clear about is from 2:30 until their end of that day, which is 4 o'clock in most cases for teachers contract wise, that is PLC, we call it PLC time, which is professional learning community. It's very structured. And Cindy can talk a little bit about what that looks like at the high school. I've been very impressed that when I have had a conversation with a high school teacher and said, well, Wednesday's early out for you. Can you maybe pop over here and I could talk to you real quick about such and such? And they're, no, it's PLC time. I can come after that. And I said, fantastic. That's how it should be. So I want to be clear that what it's not is, oh, I'm really out early to go make my dentist appointment, or I'm going to go pick up my kids early, or that's not what it is. It is an expectation. Our leaders are very, they do a wonderful job of helping our teachers collaborate in a very structured manner. And I don't know, Cindy, if you want to just talk for a minute about PLC time and what that looks like.
Absolutely, I'd love to. During our collaboration time this year, we have building goals centered around the teachers working to ensure that their assessments are connected with their standards. They need to do that together so that all American history teachers are teaching the same standards around the same time period and are assessing them in the same way. That's fair and consistent for our students. It also makes for more reliable work when teachers are doing it together. So American history would be an example. That's when our teachers do that work, and they need to. They're teaching kids in classrooms all day long otherwise. That's why that time is really important. Other work that happens every about third Wednesday that we have grade level meetings. And then that focuses really on our students, what students need a little more help with what they're doing. How are we adding in those extensions for them, those for other students? What are we doing to make sure we're serving our students with IEPs, by reports, and any other needs as well? Those are examples of what happens during our times. And yes, it's packed and it's very important. And we're really fortunate in this district to have it. It's absolutely best for our students.
I know some districts do like a late start. What makes us do an early on instead of a late start?
What we found out in variety district, they do it in a variety of ways. We find out that the attention of the teachers isn't the best right away in the morning, because what they're focusing on is getting the classroom ready, getting organized for the day. It's not always the most valuable time right away in the morning. Because they're thinking about other things, they're focusing on other things, and it's not probably the most productive time. Probably the best answer. I don't know if Mike send you.
We did that. There was a year where we had that in our calendar. So it starts on Mondays, I think. And it wasn't as productive as time at the end of the day, because they are preoccupied about, what they have to do that day and whatever else. And so we here at least, and I think the other administrators would agree that better focus at the end of the day as opposed to morning.
I read an article once, and I hesitate to mention this because I have no idea where it is now or if it's even accurate. But with early outs, just allowing more unsupervised kids would maybe get in trouble during that time, where if it was like in the morning, it would be less you know, there'd be less chance for things to be happening. So I think there was like a direct correlation between like teen pregnancy and early outs or something like that. But I don't know if that, you know, so that's, I guess that's why I asked the question.
What I do like about all of us having the early out is then that does allow for some supervision, perhaps if you've got siblings or neighbors, or right now the high school gets out and our kids went to, you know, but at least this way we would have, you know, the family would be out. And that might be helpful if you have an older sibling and younger, to have a little bit of help there, so.
Yeah, on that note, that's a question that I had. I had a few questions. I think you answered a lot of them pretty well. One was on the Fridays versus Wednesdays, because I know as a parent, it's a heck of a lot easier to get off on a Friday. Because I've heard from quite a few working moms and two-earner families that hesitant on every week, there's going to be an early out now, and with the kind of to your point, we know Kids Club has been on a wait list every time because we've asked about other kids, and it seems like they're always on a wait list. And that'd be one thing that I just want to make sure that we're considering, and not that I need anything in writing to consider this, but I want us, the district, someone to formally speak with the Kids Club staff and say, if families, you know, if 2:30 is the tipping point for some parents that can't get off work in time, is that influx to an already tapped out Kids Club gonna cause issues with childcare? So that's something I'd like to hear back
Yes.
next month.
Yes, I will follow up even before next month on that, but I can share it also in the meeting, but I have not heard about the wait list, so that's something that I'm not sure about, so I'll double check and see what is their capacity, and if we were to do the 2:30, what would that look like? So
Yeah.
I
You know,
will
and
do
it's,
that.
it's actually surprising, you know, on what's the number of, I'm sure you're aware of the number of activities that take place during the week. You know, and just from a football perspective, you know, I know coaches have gone against having early outs on Fridays because they don't want their players to go home and hang out and lay around and sit around for, you know, extra time after school before they need to get prepared for games and things. But the number of coaches you could lose between middle school and high school activities, you know, it can be 10 to 12, which then impacts team dynamics and collaboration opportunities for teams. So that was primarily why why it was set up on a Wednesday.
Yeah, and that was a good response. I appreciated that, and it's something I hadn't considered. I can see on the learning side and in that PLC time how that could be impactful. And I'm trying to get training done at any point. You always seem to have one person missing, and that was always the person that you needed.
Yeah, very rarely anybody got on Wednesdays unless they're gone for personal reasons.
Yeah. Are there any other examples of districts that have been doing something like this?
Roland Story and Ballard almost run this exact calendar, very similar to this calendar.
With that kind of early, late out
Yeah,
kind of thing?
yeah. Most everybody's going on the late out, you know, the early release versus the late start. Very similar. It's almost a replica calendar minus breaks and things. We do them a little differently. Like we have that day that falls on Easter, which I think everybody likes, that extra day Easter. There's just a few things that we've tweaked, but it's very similar to a lot of different calendars.
Does Ames go early every Wednesday as well?
Yeah, I think so.
They always see their buses early on
Yeah.
Wednesdays.
Yeah.
Their elementary school started like 7:30.
Yeah, it's early.
It's too.
And we've looked at,
In my opinion.
there, you know, talking about research and things, there's a lot of research behind not starting school until 9 o'clock because of brain development and need more sleep, but then you gotta understand.
We're not doing that. Just
No.
don't write that much.
No, yeah. If you bump everything to 9, then there has to be something on the back end, which interferes with athletics and traveling, and you end up losing more kids actually than you lose more academic time than you gain, but there's a lot of research behind some of those things, so.
Melissa, if I could just, you know, you were talking about I don't have research behind this, but I can just tell you having been here. So like a lot of schools that do have a late start have like city transportation to help with getting kids to school in addition to whatever, or we don't here. And I can just tell you, anecdotally, we had a lot of kids coming late because parents had to leave for work. And here we're still, I mean, we're on the edge of town, but it feels like we're out kind of on our own line. And we did have that year quite a few, you know, who would roll in late because the kids were responsible for getting themselves here. Less so probably at the elementary and intermediate. But I know here, because they don't drive like they would at the high school.
Mhm,
So just if you have parents ask you about that,
mhm.
I can tell you that, I would say that was probably, were you guys here when we did the late start on Monday? So I think just small town, I think that's one of the things that is hard about a late start is that transportation people want to do.
Right. I think one thing that'll be good about the 2:30 out across all schools is like, when I was in high school, my sister was at the middle school, I'd pick her up on Wednesdays. But I didn't have enough time to like get home, so I just come and sit in the pickup line for 30 minutes. And then pick her up, and I think like it was a lot of people who did that, like it'd be like me and Ava Henningsen and like 3 other high schoolers who all had middle school siblings, and it's like kind of just a waste of 30 minutes. It didn't even feel like you're getting out early because then you have to go wait for your sibling. So I think that'd be nice if it's all the schools that then.
And you'd be surprised at pickup lines. I mean, if you look out the window at 2 o'clock, there are people lining up at 2 o'clock. I mean, you know, it's a pretty long line. You know, it's interesting to watch, you know, the whole clogging with the roundabout, and all the things that we've been through to try to correct those things. And, yeah, I think it's a calendar that is well thought out with a lot of input from district stakeholders. Does anybody else have any other questions?
Vic, can I just ask, can you be clear for us about, I want to be as transparent as possible here. Talk a little bit about the once a month, 12:20, 12:30. It's something that already exists. And so our yellows on the Wednesdays and how we modified those.
Yeah, you can see on the yellows, we try, so one part of the feedback is if we had a 12:30 release, could there be some consistency to it? So the 12:30 releases are building/district PD. So those would occur once a month. We tried to put them on the last Wednesday of the month. Now, obviously, we can't do that in every single month because you have a kind of a goofy month with conferences in November and Christmas, and then you know you have the Christmas break there that kind of screws that rotation up a little bit. But we try to keep that as consistent so everybody would understand that the last Wednesday is at 12:30.
And that already.
That is
exists.
currently what
That's
we're
not-
already doing.
The
We're already been
consistency
doing
is
that.
new.
Yes, the consistency on the fourth Wednesday of the month, you know, mattered. Obviously, in May, it's gonna look a little different because of the last week of school. So we kind of move things around a little bit. Some of those are strategically placed due to grading marking times and things like that too. So, but we tried to, that feedback that we took from the parent group was to try to keep it as consistent as possible.
So the November and the March, those 2 extras, those are associated with conference.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
That's good. I thought the same thing.
Now, the one difference was, is like on conference day, for example, and I can't read that closely, but the high school will go all day. And then they will have conferences after school till 7, whereas the elementary will start conferences a little earlier. And go from 1 to 7. That was a little bit of a change. We've kind of gone both ways over the last few years.
Yeah. Tyler's got the record here. He's been through as your 11th calendar discussion. Tyler, maybe 12th. I mean, I've been through, I think, 3 or 4 of these now, and there's no ever perfect solution. I mean, from community to staff to everything else, but I will say, Vic, I love the process you guys went through. I love the feedback you did. I mean, I think it's the best way to go about putting together the best calendar that makes as many people happy as possible. It'll never be perfect. It doesn't exist. But I do really appreciate the process you guys went through on this, the feedback, the discussions. I think it was awesome. So I really appreciate it.
So if I could talk a little bit about the process, as we go forward, so we have a legal obligation to have a public hearing, before the, official district calendar. So, after tonight's meeting, I will, publish a notice in the paper, which is right here in the newspaper. It cannot be any more than 20 days or any less than, 10 days. So, this will go in the paper and we'll have a public hearing before, right at the beginning of next month's board meeting. Give the public time for input if they so desire. And then during the February meeting, if the board decides to approve it, then it will be official at the February meeting.
So on that, I'd like to see, we've got a communications director now, that has been doing a really good job of getting information out there. I'd like to see more engagement to parents and families, not that it's not been occurring. But just, we all live in our own little worlds, and in a couple of the worlds that I'm in, they're oblivious to it. Really not a lot of understanding of the process. Or how it's been, and I don't think that's the fault of it. I agree, the process is really good. I just like to see more engagement. I don't like knowing that, okay, your chance for public comment is 20 minutes before the vote. So that'd just be my thing, work with Troy and get that out there, whether it's surveys or.
Yeah, to give you a little feedback, Josh, that to my knowledge, and Tyler can maybe speak to this too, he's been here a lot longer than I have. We have not ever sought out information from parents related to the calendar unless there would be a dramatic change to the calendar. So for example, a district went to 4 days instead of 5, that would be a dramatic change that you would want to run by. You went to 12:30 early releases every Wednesday, that would be a dramatic change. So it is not typically standard practice from district to district to seek out large volume information from the community on your calendar, mainly because of the too many cooks in the kitchen. There's a lot of opinions there. You can obviously look at patterns, if you got a lot of input from parents and things. But it's definitely worth doing some work on. So
Yeah, like I said, I'm not disagreeing with you. Personally, I think I agree. You can definitely overburden yourself with too much. Personally, I'd just like to see a little bit more. And then I have no problem telling all of them, sorry, I heard some really good staff examples for why that is. And again, maybe it's just me.
there are a lot of
Bump
factors.
that up a bit because we have someone that does it full time.
There's a lot of factors that, they don't understand, like the 180 hours,
Yeah.
the 187 contract days. Makes sense when you line things up with the Board of Regents. And so we try to use all the things that are as transparent as we possibly can be, but I definitely understand your feedback.
It'd be a great YouTube video or a podcast episode
Oh, there we go.
very soon.
I also think we could do, speaking to what you're saying, Josh, maybe just an FAQ. That here's the calendar projected for next year. Here's, we could ask all the questions that they talked about, put the answers there, and then do some sort of form at the bottom if they wanted to give feedback. I always appreciate feedback. Doesn't matter what we're talking about. I always also think about, I want to be mindful of people if they're giving feedback, then we have to make sure we're really open, because if we get 100 pieces of feedback and we're only able to modify maybe 1 or 2, I want to make sure we're being mindful of what they're suggesting and we're able to make that change. You might have somebody say, well, why don't we just do 1,000 hours? And it's like, oh, well, that's not, but we can put that into an FAQ so people have the information before if they want to give feedback, they can. And the challenging part with the calendar, like many things, is that we're probably not going to please everyone, but we're going to do our very best. And if we know we reached out to people and we're being transparent, I think that that's a wonderful way to make sure that people are getting the information and that they still have an opportunity to give input.
If I understand where you're coming from, I would agree that it's not suggesting that you do anything more in your process. I think you've done a great job of engaging a lot of input, more than what we have in the past.
We went to this
Probably.
PTO,
It's more about, okay, let's now take credit for the process and communicate the process.
Yeah, right.
So that,
Yep.
we're not, at this point, really not seeking a whole lot more input because you brought it all in. Right? If there was something that was extraordinary, sure. But at this point, it's communicating the process so that just as we've just gotten, we understand why some of these decisions were made.
because they're legitimate questions that I'm getting that it took till to now, to really understand why. So,
People just don't know what they don't know, right?
yeah, and then some of it, there are always, those unique perspectives. We're seeing more and more of the dual income families and those challenges than we have before. And I will always err and speak to that a little bit more heavy just because of our personal experience. And again, those are the circles we run in. So yeah, thank you. And I'm glad to see more staff training time, that can be devoted to not just teaching. I think it speaks to the quality of education we can deliver, that you can give that extra time.
Great. Thank you.
Anything else on the calendar? Dick, thanks again.
Yep.
We'll see you in about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Moving along, board reports, the IASB annual convention. I was just telling Gail, I thought we did that last month, but I don't remember. It's like, oh, 3 months ago, it seemed like we did that. No, I couldn't, I'm sure we did. I know Tyler and I and Dr. Trujillo attended that down in Des Moines. I'll be honest, I can't remember any high points right now. It's always a good kind of step back, get a view of what other districts are doing. You kind of attend a bunch of classes. And I know you, Melissa was not able to attend this year, Josh was not either, but highly, highly encourage anybody to attend every year. It's awesome. So what did I miss? Except for everything.
No, I think it would be great to get as many from the board together, because it's an opportunity to kind of learn together, or I really enjoy the breakouts. So one of them, for example, was on communication. And we now have a position there, so I think we're in a much better place than we were a few years ago. But you hear some of the struggles from other districts, and it's just an opportunity to interact with other school board members. So to the extent that you can, I'd say try to carve it out on the calendar. And it's a great opportunity for the board. You see lots of districts that have their entire boards there. I think that's healthy.
So you're allowed to attend in Gilbert. You're here.
We posted, it's all posted.
And it's
Strong.
usually the same week, like the week before Thanksgiving, right?
The Thursday before Thanksgiving, yeah.
And then there's some moments of, if you recall, we had, I believe it was the Linmar Orchestra that played and entertained us, and they were incredible. And then also they have keynote speakers that always are really moving and gives us things to think about. And then the breakout session, for example, I went to one on open enrollment because we've had some changes in the law this past year. And so that's where I went and listened to them talk about what are the implications for school districts. And so it's inspiring, it's also learning. And then one of the things that I put in my feedback to the organization is I'd like a little more time at the tables to talk with my colleagues that we come together, because then we come back for lunch and boom, they're right onto a speaker, and we don't get quite enough time to talk. But it is wonderful to be there together and to say, hey, what did you go to? What did you hear? What did you hear? You know, it was really nice. So I think it would be a good opportunity for all of us.
Be really cool now that we have a student.
Yes.
Members to have you guys.
Come with us. Yeah.
They have fresh cookies in the break sections that you can eat like every time you walk by, so. You're in. Speaking, you just mentioned change in legislature, didn't you? Well, you can speak on the next topic too, on governor's education reform bill. You want to hit on that real quick?
Yes, so I've had quite a few parents asking me about this. If you listen to the Governor Reynolds gave a state address, I believe, where a big part of her agenda was about education. So I was really happy to see that she was spending a large majority of her speech on education as she looks at that. And so that was good news. And so in addition to, she broke it down and was very specific about a couple of things. One I wanted to mention is that she talked about perhaps changing. Iowa school finance is quite complex. And she had mentioned maybe loosening the strings, if you will, on different pockets of money that we could use a little differently. We haven't quite gotten more specifics on that, but that's something we're keeping a close eye on, because that is something that could perhaps help us. But we'll see. And then in addition to that, she has made a large announcement and is talking about school vouchers. And I have had parents come to me and asking about what does it mean? What does it look like? How does it impact Gilbert? What I would say is that, so what's hopefully school vouchers, what it means is that if you have a student and you would like them to go to a private school, then it's just over $7,000 of the money that follows the student would go to the private school. So it would take money away from the school that they currently attend and shift it over to a private school. I would say, and that's the concerning part as a public education and a public school district that we'll be keeping a close eye on. I think for Gilbert itself, I think we would be okay. I think a lot of our families maybe already attend a private school, or a lot of our families, I've heard this multiple times since joining Gilbert, is that feel that their kids are getting a private education right here in our public school. And I'm really grateful to our teachers and our staff when they say that. And so we hope that our families will continue to feel that way and stay with us. The challenge down the road can be, as education, public education as a whole, is it could end up being a significant amount of money that is shifted from public education into private education. And that's sort of the rub, if you will, if you're out there reading the things that are out there. And I would encourage everyone to go out and read about it and make your own decisions about how you feel about it, one way or another, and share that with your legislators as we move forward through this session. If you have questions about vouchers, I will do my best to answer them, but there's a lot of stuff on mine. But I do feel good about where we are with Gilbert schools and our families. The other thing, just so everyone knows, is that we experienced this in Arizona. I've been through this. Yeah, and so we've been through this voucher opportunity, I guess you would call it. I don't know if I call it that, but system before, as well as charter school movements in Arizona. So I have been through some of that and kind of know what it looks like as we go forward. But what I know is Iowa's education system is incredible. I'm very proud to be a part of the Iowa public school education system. And I would hope that we would all remember that that takes funding, and we hope that our funding stays with our kids in our public schools. That's my own little political, I guess, statement, but that's just my own philosophy. And all I can say is I would really encourage people to read about it and make their own decisions and reach out from there.
The latest I heard is she is supporting a 2.5 SSA.
I saw that as well.
But, you know, I don't know, last time, you know, when the voucher bill didn't go through, then they approved in the late open amendment changes. So, you know, we never know exactly what's going to be the end result. So, 2.5 is, I guess we have more, but there's a lot going on.
7 last year, wasn't it? I don't know. I had that number. What was it? Okay.
But I don't know for sure. The year before, they threw a late amount in, really at the tail end of it. But nothing like 3%, though. That would be nice.
Yeah. Any comments, questions on the topic? Sure, everybody's got an opinion on it, but not a lot we can do in this room on it either, so. Board retreat is scheduled for Saturday, the 28th, 8 to noon. I know on the agenda, we've got Melissa's house, which we appreciate, but I think we're gonna move it to a conference room because now with RSP, we're gonna need projection and computer technology piece. So more to come on that. Dr. Hugh and I will talk. We'll get a location sooner than later, but I think we're gonna need some sort of conference room. It'll be away from the school. That's the one thing we're gonna try to do it outside the school. But we'll try to find a conference room with projection and laptops and everything else. So any other comments on that? All right, next on the agenda, we need to appoint a Story County Conference Board representative.
Andrew, I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah.
Can I just pop back to that?
Sure, go ahead.
I just want to ask to make sure what we have planned, if we're all, if there's anything else that we haven't planned. So we have RSP that we talked about that. I was going to share some of the pieces about where we are as a district and looking to moving forward with that. And then also we had talked about a little more in depth on the vulnerability study, so we could share that in that. And then is there anything else that you want to make sure that we cover in that time?
Yeah, I think what I may hit on too, just with some of the newer board members is just kind of the role of the board, just kind of just generalized. Grab some information from IASB and just, we don't need anybody to come in, we can do it internally.
Great.
We just kind of talk about just the role of the board, the role of the superintendent, just kind of high level. Since we're a good time to do that outside the meeting room, the board meeting.
Yeah. Anything else?
Tyler, Josh, Melissa, anything else?
Donuts.
Oh, I'll have more than donuts. I'm sure. But also, as we have RSP talk to us, then that might, we might then move into a conversation about CMBA and where we are with them and where we're headed with them as well, so.
Yeah.
We're gonna be busy. That's all I
Yes,
have.
we will. All right. Moving ahead, we've got an appointment with Story County Conference Board Representative. Currently, it's Jeff Mosman is our appointed representative. Jeff is not here tonight, so I am going to appoint Jeff again. Because I have that power, it looks like. And the same goes to appoint a City of Ames Conference Board Representative. Jeff is currently that position as well, and Jeff just volunteered to do that again for next year.
Way to go, Jeff.
Good, thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
District taxable valuations. You see the report there in our board notes? They are up, right, Gail?
Yes, they are up. So we trend, when we do our model, our financial model, we use 5%. And so this coming year, we'll be able to use 6.64%, which is a nice hike. So that is good news. I don't believe other districts are seeing this. So this was a nice surprise. So this will help with our tax base. And it's a direct increase for couple and our debt service and
bonding capacity.
debt service to go with bonding capacity. So it was a nice surprise. So we'll be using this. This is one of the factors that we'll be taking forward to do our district budget that is due April 15th. This is just one piece of that. A nice surprise to go into the budget year.
Thank you, Gail. Facilities reports, master planning update. I know Courtney is not here tonight. I think Christine, you had some comments.
Yes, I was just going to share with everyone that after we had our sneak peek from RSP, we met with CMBA to talk about what does that look like. They have now, they're taking the beginnings of that information and they have reached out to each of the building principals to say, here's what we're thinking as it relates to a proposal for your building. What does that look like? And I'll be talking to everybody about that. Hopefully I'll be able to sit in on all of those as well, just to listen in and just to get another perspective. And then when CMBA is scheduled to come back to us in February to offer us a more precise, hopefully, building plan related to bonding that we can look at that's within our budget. That offers what I've asked them for is an a la carte menu to say if we want to add on this or add on that, what's that going to cost and what are we going to give up to do that? And by reminding all of us that, our tenants, if you will, moving forward is it's about capacity for student classrooms. It's about safety and security, and then it's about our activities as needed moving forward. So those are the same, pretty similar that tenants that were there as we went through this previously, but just keeping our focus on those pieces as we move forward. And then I asked them to make sure that what they're offering us is within our budget. Because sure, we all like to have the $100 million plan, but that's not what we're trying to do. So they're working on that and we'll continue to work with them so that hopefully when they come in February, that's what you can anticipate seeing. And then what I see from there is then the board will all sit down together to make a decision about where do we see this going from there.
It kind of brings back to another piece of our retreat is going to be maybe getting back to the focus of what our goal is at the district, just to kind of get back to that from a facilities planning again, we talked about in the past, whatever our main goal objectives, because once that data is going to come into us, then things are going to start to move pretty quickly. So it'd be a good time to kind of step back again, level set, know where we want to go, and then when the data comes, things start to kind of go into place based on our goals.
And assuming we go forward with something, Gail provided the dates for the bond elections, which would be September or November. So that'd be the other thing. We just talked through whether we think would be a good target.
In November would be during the general election.
Yep.
And September would be a special election then. So,
It's typically in a bond, we said, let's target November. We want to get community involved in some education on what we're trying to do. Usually it's a bond committee that we put together that's separate from us to help drive that. And that would need to happen months ahead of it. So 4 or 5 months ahead of it.
any other questions on facilities master planning update? All right, moving right along to new business. Consider approve to authorize the district's administration to submit a request to the school budget review committee in the amount of $352,866 for modified supplemental amount for the 2023-24 dropout prevention program for expenditures necessary to implement the 23-24 at-risk and dropout prevention program plans as approved by the Gilbert CSD School Board.
So this is something the district and the board approves every year. And this is an additional funding based on its calculation. And we included in on our district budget on April 15th. This year, this budget amount of the $352,866 is a $14,000 increase over the previous year. And so basically, I included a out summary in your packet just to give you an idea of what we use the funding for. Now we have it's a flat, it's a categorical bucket. And so if you think about some of these positions, they move around, and for like right now, I know Cindy, we're having trouble staffing. So a full-time, so like at the end of this year, we may not have as much in the academic study halls because we just can't find, as soon as we get the position filled, they leave, and trying to find employees is a problem. So, regardless of, if you get into the detail about FTE, full-time equivalency, FTE, we do half of our salaries for all of our guidance personnel if there's funding, but there's only so many dollars available. And we use those up first, and then the remainder of the expenses are picked up by the general fund itself. So regardless of the FTE and the different people, I mean, you can say, well, let's use it here, well, it's just okay. You move it here and then the general fund picks it up over here. But overall, the board needs to approve the authority to put those funds in our budget, and that's what I'm bringing to the board tonight.
I'll move to approve.
Sorry.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Moving on to the next item is the updated athletic handbook. And before we go and do a motion on this, I think a couple comments, Christine, or I think you have some comments on this.
Do you know what page?
I do, I
It's down.
believe it's around page 21. However, I don't know if it's page numbers, and I say that now, but the heading you're looking for is violations of the good conduct policy. And so it's a ways down. Not on page 2. Violations of the good conduct policy.
Page 5, I think. Or at least there is someone.
There is one there. I think what we'll find.
Right there.
Right there, yeah.
Okay, so let me just start us off, and then Cindy, I'll pass it to you. And so this has been brought to our attention that we have a wonderful athletic handbook that aligns with our student handbook, that aligns with our board policies around good conduct related to student conduct in school and out of school, and what that means for while they are representing Gilbert. Whether they're in a game or not in a game, but they're out for athletics. So we made some changes to this policy manual last year that I felt, for example, I'll give you an example. A year ago, we had a self-reporting component in here that if you came in and self-reported, that would reduce maybe what your consequence would be if you made a poor choice. What we found is that wasn't really working the way we had intended because the world has changed related to social media. So we would have kids, it would be all over social media, and then kids would come in. I mean, it was already like that ship had sailed by the time they came into us. So we took that out with lots of advice from different people. And so it's something that we're always doing to say, what can we do better? We've learned over this year of just ways we can improve our athletic handbook. And so we met, so Cindy and our athletic director, Ian Smith, myself, and then also we worked with our legal counsel, Carrie Weber, with Allers, on taking a look at our handbook and to see if there was a place where we could add a couple things to improve it. And so I'm going to let Cindy take it from there.
Okay, Gail, if you would scroll down. Right here, under this heading of violations of the good conduct policy is a simple change we first made at the encouragement of Carrie Weber, our legal counsel. She simply said, take your categories. It says smoking and use of tobacco, for example, and then it's going to go through 5 categories there. You can scroll over to get them, to let them see what it is. Initially, under each category, we had the consequence listed. She simply said, don't do that. Take the consequences out, but then at the end. And so we did that. Really simple advice. Then if you keep scrolling, the important one that I think adds right there. Okay, so the important one that she encouraged, she told us we need to put in, and we really used her exact wording, is what you see in bold with an asterisk there. And that's on purpose. It will stay in bold, it will have that asterisk. We want it to be extremely clear. Administration has discretion to modify the period of ineligibility dependent on the severity of the offense, regardless if it's the student's first offense. She encouraged us to do that. We did that. And I do want to, Tim Pizzetti, previous activities or athletic director, had great wording in there that really gave us this leeway. However, this makes it abundantly clear. So that was the important wording that we put in, and then we put that same asterisk just above, as you see in bold, consequences for violations of the good conduct policy. The part that's added there, the part that's added is include but are not limited to. So it includes, and sorry, Gail, go ahead and go up again. The consequences right there. Consequences can include, for first violation, 25% of the season. For any additional violations, 50% of the season. But notice it now says about that, but are not limited to. That gives administration discretion. So in the event of something that needed that leeway for us, administration, of course, includes Ian Smith, myself, John Ronca, and Dr. Trujillo.
Good, thank you very, very much. This has been a topic, as we all know, in the news lately. And I think it's good. Great wording. I mean, it gives us the leeway and it doesn't just make it black and white. So.
And I would just like to add that the intent is that we would stick with the first offense, second offense. But having that in there gives us, if we needed to do something different because of a difficult situation, a larger situation, if you will, it gives us the option to be able to do that. And so I want to thank our team for working together on that. Pending board approval tonight, this will go into effect as of tomorrow, and we will be notifying parents and sports that there is a change, so people are aware of it.
Any questions on the updates to the athletic handbook? Do we have a motion?
Make a motion.
Second? Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed. Moving right along, financial reports. Gail?
We're happy to be here. I'm just gonna briefly touch on, in general terms, the revenues and the expenses. The revenues year to date are lagging a little bit, mainly in the property tax collection and state foundation aid. And our state foundation aid is basically going to level out as we go forward, because I made a big entry in October, but the other state and federal are reimbursements, and so the reimbursements for state and federal are not happening until right now. So by the time for the second quarter or the first semester, so those will be happening. But overall, year to date, our revenues are lagging, but as you can see, our expenditures are budgeted or below our budgeted amount. So overall, I'm not too concerned about that. Expenses look good, and the revenues are they're just lagging right now, and not on target for the collection at the time that we budget for it. Other than that, our cash is a little bit down, but I'm still, again, our cash is very healthy. But as you can see, the general fund is a little bit lower than it was a year ago at this time. Not concerned. Right now, our interest rate for our investments are at 3.8%. That is up almost 3.49% last month. So it continues to grow, and we don't need the cash right now, but if for some reason, I'm just going to leave that cash there, and I can easily send it over into our checking account if we need it. But other than that, I'm just going to leave that there to get as much interest rate as we can, because our checking account does not get the rate that we get in our investment. So not too concerned about that. Overall, published budget comparison for being halfway through our budget year, we're way under our calculation of published. So that's in good shape. And there's a couple of expenses that have been slowing it down, but believe me, they're going to come up again as the maintenance department and the buildings and grounds, they're getting their projects together, and they're going to be submitting the plan. I've requested our summer projects. So trying to get workers to come and projects and getting us on their docket for planning time. We had one of the big expenses is high school chiller, which is a heating cooling mechanism, I guess. But it's close to $60,000 repair. That was the big one for repairs. We have some activity going on. We're actually this next couple of weeks, we've got a dance team, and we have cheerleaders in action, doing some traveling and competitions. So they're collecting their funding. There's negative, but they have a plan and they know it. And nutrition is doing extremely well in nutrition fund. Other than that, unless anybody has any questions.
It's good. Any questions for Gail? All right, moving along, consent agenda. Anything need to be pulled, discussed? Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion.
We have a second.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda passes. Calendar, again, 28th of January, 8 to noon is our board retreat. More information to come on location, but we should have that here the next week or so. February 13th is our next scheduled board meeting, our regular board meeting. And we'll have the public hearing. Yeah, at the elementary school, again, we'll have the public hearing before on the calendar, and then it'll go right into our normal board meeting, 6 o'clock, and then March 6th will be another regular board meeting.
And that is a change from the normal time because of spring break.
Oh, yeah.
Andrew and I discussed that. We just thought it would be better to move it up than have it at the end after spring break.
Will we do any tour if we're at the elementary, or is there Is that the purpose for having?
Yeah, we can work that in. The reason I was gonna mention, so I'm glad you asked that, is that the reason our meetings have been sort of shifting around is because we've had conflicts with the intermediate library at this time. So that's how this has kind of happened. But we can certainly set up the tour if people want to take a look at the elementary one there. Sure.
Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second,
Sorry.
all those in favor to adjourn?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.